Be me. Tenured professor in the sociology department, 43 years old, been teaching for 17 years now, climbed every rung of this ladder they call academia. Specialized in feminist social theory, intersectionality, critical analysis of power structures. My CV spans 23 pages, publications in every journal that matters. Course enrollment always packed, mostly young women who finally get to hear the truth about how this world actually works. Men show up too, thinking they'll get an easy A in what they assume is a soft science. Always amusing, watching them squirm when reality hits. First day of autumn semester, scan the lecture hall as students file in. The 130 enrolled this year, good numbers. Mostly female as usual, exactly as it should be. Notice a few men scattered throughout, already sitting in the back rows like they're trying to hide. One catches my attention, baby-faced kid who can't be more than 18. He's sitting front row, notebook already. Out, looking eager. Internally, roll my eyes. Here we go again, with the overconfident freshman, who thinks he'll impress me. They never learn that I see, right through their performance of enthusiasm. Start my opening lecture, the one I've perfected over nearly 2 decades. Explain the structure of oppression, how it permeates every institution. Detail how the dominant group maintains power through normalized violence and systematic exclusion. Privilege is invisible to those who have it, I say, letting that sink in. Watch the male students shift uncomfortably. Good. They should be uncomfortable. 3 weeks into the semester, establish my classroom culture exactly how I want it. Female students speak freely. I encourage every contribution, build on their insights. Male students learn quickly that their perspectives aren't particularly valuable here. Had one guy try to debate me on wage gap statistics second week. Asked him pointed questions about his sources until he admitted he'd just read something online somewhere. Entire class laughed. He dropped the course 2 days later. Submitted my recommendation to the dean that he consider whether university was right for him. The institution backed my academic judgment, as they always do. 17 years builds certain protections, certain untouchability, committee memberships, grant approvals, tenure review boards. Know exactly how to phrase concerns about students in ways that administrators take seriously, have helped remove 4 male students from campus entirely over the years. Each one deserved it for creating hostile environments for female students. Well, the documentation I provided proved they created hostile environments. Same thing, really. My observations are expert witness testimony. This semester's front row freshman keeps participating, answers questions about the readings, takes extensive notes, actually does the homework. Irritating how he seems to think his contributions matter. Decided it's time to handle this before he gets too comfortable. 4th week, lecture on privilege theory and invisible advantages. Perfect opportunity to illustrate my points using live examples. Men in the room already serve a useful pedagogical function, whether they realize it or not. Privilege operates through denial of its own existence. I explain, pacing at the front. My leather boots click against the tile floor. Sound carries authority. Those who benefit most from systemic advantages are precisely those who cannot see them. Glance deliberately at the front row student. He's still taking notes, oblivious to what's coming. The dominant group experiences their unearned advantages as natural, as simply the way things are. Stop pacing, stand directly in front of his desk. Let's examine this concretely. Voice. Sharp now, clinical. I point at him. What advantages do you think you've experienced in your life? He looks up, startled, pen still in hand. I'm sorry, Professor, could you clarify the question? Classic deflection tactic, asking for clarification to buy time. It's quite simple, crossing my arms. What privileges has your identity afforded you? Entire lecture hall watching now, exactly as planned. Female students lean forward. They've seen me do this before. They know this is the educational part, where theory meets practice. Well, he sets down his pen carefully. I'm not sure I understand what specific advantages you mean. Of course you don't. I smile coldly. That's exactly the point I'm making. Turn to address the full class, using him as my visual aid. Here we have a perfect example of privilege blindness. Swivel back to face him directly. You sit there, embodying every statistical advantage, every systematic benefit, and claim you can't see any of it. His face reddened slightly. Good. The data is irrefutable. I continue, warming to my topic. Your demographic earns more for the same work, holds more positions of power, faces less violence, encounters fewer barriers to advancement. Tick these off on my fingers, each one a hammer strike. You move through spaces without fear, your voice is taken seriously by default, your competence is assumed rather than requiring constant proof. Walk back to my podium, let him sit in his exposure. You benefit from centuries of accumulated advantage, structural systems designed specifically to elevate you. Flip through my lecture notes, find the statistics I keep prepared. Men in this country hold 67% of elected offices, despite being 49% of the population. Look up at him pointedly. Men comprise 73% of corporate board members. Another pointed look. Men are overrepresented in every high-status profession, law, medicine, engineering, business leadership. The female students nod. Several take notes on these figures. Median earnings favor men in 93% of occupational categories. Really hitting my stride now. This is what I'm good at. So when you sit there claiming you don't see your privilege, what you're actually demonstrating is willful ignorance. Let that land. Watch him process being called ignorant in front of his peers. You benefit from a system designed for you, by people who look like you, to advantage people like you. His hand raises slightly, tentatively. Suppress my smile. They always try to defend themselves. Yes? Voice dripping with condescension. Do you have some meritocratic fantasy you'd like to share with the class? He takes a breath, meets my eyes directly. Should have looked away. Should have shown appropriate deference. Professor, I don't want to be disrespectful, he starts, already rolling my eyes internally at the false politeness. But I think those statistics only tell part of the story. There it is, the inevitable pushback. Oh, really? I cross my arms again. Please, enlighten us about what I'm missing. Sarcasm clear enough that several students snicker. Well, he continues, voice steady. You mentioned violence, that men face less violence. Nod curtly. Statistically accurate, continue. Actually, he says, and something in his tone makes me pay attention. Men are 62% of violence victims overall. Pause mid-reach for my water bottle. Men are 78% of homicide victims according to the Bureau of Justice Statistics. What is he doing? And if we're talking about spaces to move through without fear, men are significantly more likely to be victims of assault by strangers in public spaces. Feel my jaw tighten. That's taken out of context. I start. Regarding competence being assumed. He continues, not stopping. The current education system shows females outperforming males at every level. He's speaking faster now. Not frantic, but focused. Females earn 60% of bachelor's degrees, 63% of master's degrees. My mouth opens, but he keeps going. Females have higher GPAs. On average, higher graduation rates, lower dropout rates. Around the room, students stop whispering. If the system was designed for males, as you said, we'd expect to see males thriving in it, but we're seeing the opposite. Try to interrupt. You're cherry-picking. I'm using the same methodology you just used. His voice cuts through, still respectful but firm. You selected statistics to support your narrative. I'm providing context you omitted. Blood pressure rising. How dare this 18-year-old? You mentioned workplace representation, he continues, which focuses on the top positions. Flips open his own notebook, has actual notes prepared. But 93% of workplace fatalities are males. Around us, dead silence. Men represent 75% of the homeless population. Each fact lands like a slap. Men are 3.5 times more likely to die by suicide. Feel my face flushing now. Men receive 63% longer prison sentences for the same crimes. Try to speak, but my throat feels tight. In family courts. Mothers receive primary custody in 83% of cases. Force words out. That's because females are presumed to be caregivers, which is also sexism. Against males, he finishes. Yes, exactly. The agreement throws me. That's not what I meant. You said males don't require constant proof of competence, he continues. How is he still going? But men are presumed to be threatening, incompetent with children, emotionally deficient, disposable, lean against my podium, need the support. When war comes, men are conscripted, forced to fight and die. Men are assumed to be perpetrators in domestic violence situations, even when they're the victims seeking help. There are over 2,000 shelters for female domestic violence victims, fewer than one for males. My prepared statistics suddenly feel hollow in my mind. You talked about voice being taken seriously. His voice gentler now, but still clear. But men are more likely to be told to suppress emotions, to suffer in silence, that their pain doesn't matter. Society's message to males is that their value is instrumental, what they can provide, not inherent. Around the lecture hall, even my reliable female students look uncertain. Men are falling behind in education, mental health, life expectancy, homelessness, addiction, incarceration, suicide. He finally pauses, meeting my eyes. These aren't abstract statistics, Professor. These are real people suffering. Mouth dry, reach for water with a shaking hand. And when you use your position to tell men that their lives are privileged, that their pain is invisible because they're the oppressor class, take a drink, water doesn't help. You're contributing to the exact dismissal and dehumanization that drives those outcomes. Set the bottle down too hard, water sloshes. That's a gross mischaracterization of feminist theory. I start. I've done all the readings, he says quietly. I understand the theory. I'm questioning whether the application accounts for the full reality of people's lives. Silence stretches across the lecture hall. 130 students watching their professor flounder. This has never happened before, not in 17 years. The framework you're presenting, he continues when I don't respond, treats half the population as a monolithic oppressor class. But a homeless male veteran with PTSD doesn't have meaningful privilege over a wealthy female corporate executive. The framework doesn't account for the complexity of real human suffering. Finally find my voice, though it comes out harder than intended. You're using individual examples to dismiss systemic analysis. I'm using systemic data, he counters immediately. Everything I cited is population-level statistics. Feel something cracking inside my chest. Male suicide rates aren't individual anecdotes, they're an epidemic. Male educational decline isn't random variation, it's a decades-long trend. Male homelessness, workplace death, incarceration, these are systemic patterns. Grip the edges of my podium, knuckles white. The difference is, he says, and his voice is maddeningly calm. When I present data about male suffering, I'm not claiming females don't matter. I'm asking why we can't acknowledge that people across categories experience real hardship. Want to scream at him, to use every rhetorical weapon I've honed over 17 years. But my mind feels blank, static. You've built a career on a framework that requires villains, he says. How dare he presume to analyze me? But most people aren't villains, they're just trying to survive. And men who are struggling, who are suffering, who are dying, they deserve the same compassion and institutional support anyone else would receive. The room waits for my response. 130 pairs of eyes on me. 17 years of lectures, of perfectly deployed arguments of intellectual dominance. My mouth opens, closes, nothing comes out. You're oversimplifying complex power dynamics. I finally manage. Even to my own ears, it sounds weak. I'm sure it feels that way, he says, not unkindly. The pity in his tone makes it worse. But maybe the simplification is assuming that people's worth and suffering can be ranked by demographic categories. Check the clock desperately. Still 20 minutes left in the lecture period. Can't continue like this. Can't stand here, dismantled in front of everyone. We'll continue this discussion next class, I announce abruptly. Read chapters 7 through 9 for Wednesday. Students begin packing up, confused by the early dismissal. Always the one in control of time, of pacing, of every element. Now I'm fleeing my own classroom. The student gathers his materials slowly, doesn't look triumphant, actually looks concerned, which somehow makes it more humiliating. Female students cluster in groups whispering as they exit, catch fragments of their conversations. Never seen her like that. He had really good points, though. Maybe we should look into those statistics. My reliable cohort, my supporters, already doubting. Wait until the room empties completely before leaving. Walk across campus to my office, legs unsteady. Close the door, lock it, sink into my desk chair, stare at my degrees on the wall. PhD from a top 10 university. Publications in the most prestigious journals. 17 years of teaching evaluations that prove my excellence, except for the male students who complain about bias, about hostility. Complaints I've always dismissed as fragility, as resistance to being challenged. My computer screen glows with the draft of my latest article, Dismantling Male Entitlement in Academic Spaces. Third paragraph argues that male students' discomfort with feminist pedagogy reflects their inexperience with not being centered. Read it now with different eyes. What if their discomfort comes from being told their suffering doesn't exist? Shake my head, trying to dislodge the thought. I'm right. I know I'm right. Decades of scholarship support my positions. That kid just rattled off some statistics he probably found on biased websites. Pull up Google Scholar. Hands moving before conscious decision. Search male suicide rates. Results flood the screen. Peer-reviewed studies, CDC data, who reports, all confirming what he said. 3.5 times higher. Some sources say 4 times higher. Search workplace fatalities by gender. 92% male, according to Bureau of Labor Statistics. 93% according to other sources. Search educational attainment gender gap. Females outperforming males in nearly every measurable way. Graduation rates, GPA, degree completion, enrollment numbers. The data stares back at me, unblinking, undeniable. Close the browser, feeling sick. This doesn't change the fundamental analysis, I tell myself. Systemic oppression still exists. Structural advantages still persist. But my own words echo back. Males face less violence. Except they don't. They face more. They die more. Your competence is assumed. Except they're failing in the education system I claim is designed for them. You move through spaces without fear. Except they're the ones more likely to be assaulted, killed, sleeping on streets. Remember the student from second week who dropped out. How I humiliated him for not having perfect sources. Then recommended he leave the university entirely. He was 19 years old. What if he was already struggling? What if he needed support, not destruction? Think about the 4 male students I helped remove from campus over the years. Told myself I was protecting others, maintaining standards, ensuring accountability. What if I was just exercising power because I could? My hands shake as I open my filing cabinet, pull out my gradebooks from the past, 5 years, scan the names, the scores. Female students cluster in the A and B ranges. Male students scatter from A to F, but weighted toward the lower end. Tell myself it's because the men don't try as hard, don't engage with the material. But what if I've been grading them more harshly? What if I see the same answer and interpret it as insightful from a female student, superficial from a male? The room feels smaller suddenly, walls closing in. Built my entire career on a foundation I thought was unshakable. Structural oppression, systemic advantage, invisible privilege. Use these concepts as weapons, as justifications. That 18-year-old kid dismantled 17 years in 15 minutes. Want to hate him for it. Want to find ways to punish him for the humiliation. Could file a complaint, claim he created a hostile environment. Know exactly how to word it, what phrases trigger administrative action. Aggressive confrontation, male entitlement, undermining instructor, authority. Have done it before, successfully. The process plays out in my mind with practiced ease. Meet with the dean, express concern about a male student's behavior, provide context about patterns I've observed, professional judgment about risk, suggest the student might benefit from counseling, from a reduced course load, from leave. Watch the institutional machinery move to protect me, the tenured professor. Watch the student get buried under documentation and requirements. Sit with my hands on the gradebook, imagining the steps. Something stops me this time. Maybe it's how calm he stayed while I attacked him. Maybe it's how he cited real data while I threw around vague systemic claims. Maybe it's the look on the other students' faces as they watched me fail to respond. Or maybe it's the growing certainty that he was right. Not about everything. Surely not about everything. But about enough that my foundation shows cracks I can't ignore. Think about my colleague from the economics department. Filed a complaint against him 3 years ago for inappropriate comments. He'd questioned my research methodology at a faculty meeting. Suggested my sample size was too small, my conclusions overstated. I documented a pattern of sexist dismissal of female scholars. He lost his committee positions, got passed over for promotion. Never proved he actually said anything sexist, just that his criticism made me feel targeted. My word as a senior faculty member was enough. What if he was just critiquing my research legitimately? What if I weaponized identity to destroy someone for bruising my ego? Nausea rises in my throat. Think about all the times I've celebrated male students dropping my course. Literally celebrated. Smiled when I saw their withdrawal notices. Another one couldn't handle real education. I'd say to my female students. They'd laugh. We'd bond over the shared superiority. But those were 18, 19, 20-year-old humans, trying to get an education, trying to figure out their lives. And I made it my mission to break them down, to make them suffer. Called it pedagogy, called it necessary discomfort, called it accountability. Really, it was cruelty, dressed in academic language. My CV, with its 23 pages, suddenly feels like a monument to something ugly. How many of those publications start from the assumption that half of humanity is the problem? How many begin with the conclusion and work backward to find supporting evidence? How much of my scholarship is actually scholarship versus elaborate justification? The computer screen has gone dark, shows my reflection. 43 years old, successful, respected, powerful, and completely intellectually dishonest. The students' words come back. Men who are struggling, who are suffering, who are dying, they deserve the same compassion. Such a simple statement. Why did it hit me like a freight train? Because I've spent 17 years arguing the opposite. Not explicitly, never explicitly, but through every lecture dismissing male experience. Every time I've rolled my eyes at men's issues. Every male student I've graded more harshly. Every complaint I've filed. Every reputation I've damaged. The message was clear. Male suffering doesn't count. They're the oppressor class. They deserve what they get. A homeless male veteran might be suffering, but he still has male privilege. A suicidal teenage boy might be in pain, but he still benefits from patriarchy. The logic that seems so airtight in theory sounds monstrous when applied to actual human beings. Remember a male student from 4 years ago came to my office hours, wanted to discuss his grade on a paper. I gave him a C-, covered it in critical comments. He tried to explain his argument, why he'd made certain choices. I cut him off, told him he needed to examine his biases, suggested he wasn't ready for upper-level coursework. He left my office with his head down, shoulders slumped. 2 weeks later, he withdrew from the university entirely. I felt victorious, like I'd maintained standards. What if he was already depressed? What if I pushed someone who was barely hanging on? Men are 3.5 times more likely to die by suicide. My hands gripped the edge of my desk until my fingers hurt. What have I been doing? What have I become? Told myself I was fighting oppression, dismantling privilege, educating the ignorant. Really, I was abusing power, inflicting harm, destroying vulnerable people. Because they were male. And males are the enemy in my worldview. Except they're not the enemy, they're just people. People who struggle and hurt and die. People who deserve compassion, regardless of their demographic category. The realization sits in my chest like a stone. 17 years of my career built on intellectual dishonesty. 17 years of harming students I was supposed to educate. 17 years of wielding theory like a weapon to justify cruelty. And it took an 18-year-old freshman to expose it all. In 15 minutes, in front of 130 witnesses, with calm citations of facts I couldn't dispute. My office feels suffocating now. Diplomas mocking me from the walls. Think about Wednesday's class, having to face all of them again, having to face him again. Could double down, reassert my authority, find new ways to dismiss what happened. Already know how the script goes, perfected it over years. That student's outburst was a perfect example of male fragility. His inability to sit with discomfort reveals deep entitlement. We must maintain our analysis even when it's challenged by those it names. The female students would nod, order would be restored. The freshman would learn to stay quiet or drop the course. Everything would continue exactly as it has. Except I would know. I would know that every word was a lie. I would know that the emperor has no clothes. I would know that an 18-year-old kid understands truth better than I do. My phone buzzes, email notification. Department chair wants to meet tomorrow morning. Probably a student complained about the early dismissal, the disrupted class. Or maybe someone reported the confrontation as problematic. For once, I don't know if they're complaining about the student or about me. Sit in my dark office as evening falls. Campus outside my window, settling into dusk. Students walking in groups, laughing, living their lives. Male and female students, just people, just humans trying to figure things out. And I've been teaching them that half of them are inherently the problem. That their suffering doesn't count because of what they were born as. That compassion should be rationed based on demographic categories. What kind of educator does that? What kind of person does that? The answer sits heavy in my mind. Not a good one. Not a kind one. Not an honest one. My whole identity wrapped up in being right, being sharp, being unassailable. Tenure means never having to admit error. Publications mean claiming expertise. 17 years means authority through longevity. But none of it means I was actually correct. Think about my colleagues who nod along to my theories. My publications that get cited in other papers. My students who graduate and go on to spread the same frameworks. How much harm have I caused beyond just my own classroom? How many other people are out there teaching that male suffering is irrelevant? How many other scholars built careers on the same intellectual dishonesty? We created an entire academic industry around it. Journals, conferences, departments, theories, methodologies, all starting from the conclusion that one demographic is the problem, then finding evidence to support what we already decided. That's not scholarship, that's propaganda, and I've been one of its most effective propagandists. My breathing feels shallow, constricted. 17 years of my life, my work, my identity. What is it worth? If the foundation is rotten, the student's calm voice echoes in my memory. These are real people suffering. Such a simple point. Why couldn't I see it before? Why did I need an 18-year-old to explain basic human compassion to me? The answer hurts, but it's clear. Because seeing it would have meant admitting I was wrong. Admitting I'd built my career on harming people. Admitting I'd become exactly the kind of oppressor I claimed to fight against. Just oppressing a different group. My computer screen glows back to life. Article draft still open. Dismantling male entitlement in academic spaces. Read through it with new clarity. Every paragraph assumes men are the problem. Every recommendation involves making them more uncomfortable. Every conclusion celebrates their struggle as necessary correction. Imagine that withdrawn student reading this. Imagine the freshman who destroyed me today reading this. Imagine any male student reading this and understanding that their professor sees them as inherently defective. Cursor hovers over the delete button. 17 pages of analysis. Citations. Careful argumentation. All of it poison. All of it designed to justify cruelty as pedagogy. Handshakes on the mouse. Can't quite bring myself to delete it yet. Because deleting it means admitting what it represents. Means admitting what I am. Lean back in my chair. Stare at the ceiling. Acoustic tiles with small holes. Institutional lighting. Ordinary office. Nothing in this space reflects the devastation I feel. 43 years old. And my entire worldview just collapsed. Brought down by an 18-year-old with access to basic statistics. The humiliation should be the worst part. But it's not. The worst part is the slow, creeping realization of all the damage I've done, students I've harmed, careers I've destroyed, pain I've inflicted, all while telling myself I was righteous. I was fighting the good fight. How many students like the freshmen stayed quiet because they knew what would happen if they spoke? How many bit their tongues through my lectures, swallowed their objections, suffered in silence? How many left my class feeling worthless, defective, inherently wrong for existing? And I congratulated myself on their discomfort. I called it growth, called it necessary, called it education. Really, it was abuse. Systematized, theorized, institutionally protected abuse. But abuse nonetheless. Check the time, nearly 7 p.m. Should go home, eat something, sleep. Can't imagine sleeping with all this churning in my mind. Can't imagine facing myself in the mirror. Can't imagine walking into that classroom on Wednesday and continuing the charade. But what's the alternative? Admit I've been wrong for 17 years? Apologize to every male student I've harmed? Retract my publications, resign my positions, dismantle everything I've built? The scope of it feels impossible. Easier to suppress this feeling, to rationalize it away. Tell myself I was just having a bad day. The student got lucky with some statistics. Caught me off guard. Doesn't mean my fundamental analysis is wrong. Doesn't mean I need to question everything. Could wake up tomorrow and choose to forget this ever happened. Already know I won't, though. Can't unfeel what I felt when he cited male suicide rates. Can't unhear the silence when I couldn't counter his arguments. Can't unsee the doubt in my students' eyes as I fled my own classroom. Something broke today that can't be repaired. Not quickly, maybe not ever. My phone buzzes again. Another email. Student from class. One of my reliable female supporters. Subject line, today's class discussion. Brace myself. Open it. Professor, I wanted to reach out about what happened today. The student's points really made me think. I looked up some of the statistics he mentioned, and he was right about a lot of it. I'm not saying everything you teach is wrong, but maybe we should talk about male issues too? Some of my friends. I have brothers who are really struggling, and I never thought about it in the framework we use in class. Just wanted to share my thoughts. See you Wednesday. Read it 3 times. Losing them. Losing my students. Losing the control I've maintained for 17 years. They're thinking for themselves, questioning the framework, looking up facts, should terrify me. Instead feels almost like relief. Maybe I'm not the only one who needed to hear what was said today. Maybe we've all been trapped in a paradigm that doesn't account for reality. Maybe this is what actual education looks like. Uncomfortable truths that force growth. The irony doesn't escape me. Spent 17 years making male students uncomfortable, calling it education. One male student makes me uncomfortable, and my entire framework shatters. What does that say about which approach was actually built on truth? Sit with that question, as darkness fully settles outside. Campus lights flickering on, illuminating pathways. Students still moving around, living their lives, unaware. Somewhere out there, that freshman is probably doing homework, reviewing notes, being 18. He has no idea that he destroyed me today. Or maybe he does, and that's why he looked concerned. Maybe he's kind enough to feel bad about it. More kindness than I've ever shown to male students in his position. More than I showed any of them. My reflection in the dark window stares back at me. Successful professor, published scholar, respected expert, and complete intellectual fraud. The worst part is, I'll probably survive this. Tenure protects me. My reputation protects me. The institution protects me. Could file a complaint against the student tomorrow and probably win. Could restructure my narrative to make myself the victim. Could deploy every tool I've used before to crush challenges to my authority. The infrastructure is all there, ready to be weaponized. But sitting here in the dark, I know I won't. Not because I'm noble, or moral, or good, but because I'm too tired to maintain the lie anymore. 17 years is a long time to be wrong. The longer time to cause harm while believing you're righteous. My CV, my publications, my theories, my whole career, built on a foundation of sophisticated cruelty, dressed in academic language, protected by institutional power, but cruelty nonetheless. And today, an 18-year-old boy held up a mirror, showed me exactly what I've become. The reflection is unbearable, but I can't look away anymore. Outside my window, campus settles into night. Inside my office, I sit with the ruins of my certainty, knowing that Wednesday I'll have to walk back into that classroom, face those students, face that freshman, face myself. Not sure what I'll say, how I'll proceed, whether I can continue at all. Only sure of one thing. The version of myself that existed this morning is gone, destroyed as thoroughly as I tried to destroy that freshman, except he used truth as his weapon. And truth, I'm learning too late, always wins eventually, even against 17 years of sophisticated denial, especially against that. Sit in my dark office, and finally, painfully, begin to understand.